to take credit for this because I think it's brilliant, but again, he did it. He took his yearly goal. Now, he did have weekly goals, and back in it was last year, right?
Yeah, last year on this time.
Sometimes September or no, okay, maybe it was. But your business plan is not this. Your business plan is really simple and straightforward. Keeping a business plan is going to be different. This isn't one of those scenarios where you can look to your partner to your right and say, what did you get for answer number 7? Because answer number 7 is going to be different for everyone. But your business plan is really simple. Your business plan is a balance of your time, effort, okay, to be more efficient both professionally and personally. And that's why it's going to be different for everybody. Because your business plan is definitely going to be different than your business plan in terms of what your goals are for the year. Okay? I'm just going to make this up. I don't know who you guys are, but your goal this year might be $300,000 in gross commission income. You might be just starting out. Your goal this year is $100,000. Right? It could be $50,000. But your $50,000 isn't wrong in comparison to your $300,000 because that's what you're going to do based on the time, effort, and money you have for your business. Right? You might have a team. So again, make sure that when you create a business plan, don't create one and be embarrassed by it. Create it and be proud of it because that's your first step to moving forward. So again, and again, I really don't know what your goals are, but if yours is 50 this year, it might be 100 next year, it might be 125 the following year. You're just ramping yourself up, but you got to start somewhere. And the 50 you start now with because it's attainable. All those things are attainable to you. Okay? Don't make it $300,000 if you can't even get one listing because you don't know how to do a listing presentation. Okay? All right, so moving on. Here's how we're going to get started. What we want to know, we want to have a starting point for where we are. Okay, so we're going to review or audit last year. Again, we're going to close out 2018. We're going to look at our numbers and goals for this year, for 2019. We're going to create an action plan, and we're going to budget as well. So we're going to commit to taking action on the plan and the budget. We're going to measure and track. You're going to have regular checkups. Keep in mind, I say this all the time, you're in business for yourself, but you're not in business by yourself. There needs to be some sort of accountability in what you do on a daily basis. So we're going to talk about that. And then document it. So you can either use this, or what you can do is you can again document your goals in another system that you may use, or even in Launchpad. There's a goal tracking system in there. Do you have one of these at the back? No? Okay. Okay. There's only 2 left. Okay. Oh, and Addie, I need the attendance of who's here.
Yep.
All right, so now we've got your workbook. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at this book, and we're going to make sure that we go through the pages. So it's going to be an interactive session. There was 4 pages that were emailed out. It was kind of like the precursor to this. Did you guys get it? Did anyone do it? No? Okay. It just means that you guys have a little bit more homework than I hoped, but it's all very important. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up our books to page 2, and we're going to look at our notes. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to define your version of success. So here, and it doesn't have to be in the King's English, by the way. You don't have to write an intro, a body, and a conclusion. Just point form what your own personal definition of success is. So I'm going to give you just a few seconds to do that, okay? And then I want you to list here what were your top successes last year, 2018. While you do that, I'm going to reset this. Keep in mind, like I said, this is all very personal, so not something that you have to worry about what your partner beside you is putting down. Is anyone here brand spanking new? Just got, well, How new?
8 months?
Okay, 8 months.
7 months maybe?
So a success could be that you got your license last year.
Yeah.
That would be a good success. All right, so moving on. All right, the next thing I want us to do is perform what's called the SWOT. Do you guys know what a SWOT is? You would know, these are my spots, right? Have you done this before?
Yes.
So what is it?
Strength,
Yeah.
weakness, opportunities, and threats.
Yeah, that's right. Who's done this before to assess themselves? Okay, great. So, if you haven't done this before, this is a very eye-opening, very personal exercise. But what I want to do is I want us to look at, again, your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But before we do this, so who here has ever heard the phrase, you've got to set yourself apart from your competition before? Who's heard that before? No one's ever heard that before? Yeah, I've heard it? Okay, great. But I want to really clarify what this word means, because whenever you hear set yourself apart from your competition, the majority of us immediately think about the heavy hitters, right? The guys who are way up here. Who thinks that when they think about setting yourself apart from the competition? When you hear that, you're like, okay, well, I got to set myself apart from these people who are way up here. That might not be your competition. So before we get into creating a SWOT, I want you to understand, what does setting yourself apart from your competition really mean? If you're consistently listing properties in the average price of the GTA all properties, which is what, 7 and change right now? Are you going to compare yourself to the people who are listing $3 million homes? If you never list a $3 million home? That's not the competition that you need to be comparing yourself to. You should be comparing yourself to the people that you know and see on a regular basis who are listing and working with the same buyers that you're working with. So stop thinking about these guys when they're doing something completely different. Think about the people who you really are competing with. Now, there are people in this room who may be up in that level of $3, $4, $5 homes, and that's fine. You know who your competition is. Okay? But most of us, we think up there, but we shouldn't. Okay? Because again, my son's hockey team will never do well against an NHL team. They both play hockey, but they're not in competition with each other. Okay? So, understand again who really is your competition, and that's who you want to measure up against. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to identify your strengths. So this is on page are we on? 4? So again, I'm going to just keep talking, but I want you to put your head down. I want you to just focus on writing out what your strengths are. And I'm going to give you guys some examples as you guys are continuing to write. So one of my strengths is, and again, I tell this to everybody, one of my strengths is my ability to be empathetic, not pathetic, but empathetic, okay? Although my wife says I'm pathetic. But my ability to be very empathetic to the people that I work with, meaning I always put myself in their shoes. So, knowing that they're expecting something in this transaction from their agent, I do my very best to give them that experience. So that's one of my strengths. So again, you can write down stuff. Another one of my strengths is I've got a great listing presentation. My listing presentation is solid. I change it every so often, but the core of the presentation is phenomenal, right? And I can brag about that because I'm very happy with my listing presentation. Another one of my strengths is my ability to market products. My background is sales and marketing, so I've got a great marketing background. So yes, when you list with me, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, here's what I'm going to do to market your home. Another one of my strengths is my negotiation. Now I'm just saying this because it might trigger something in you guys as well. I'm not up here bragging about myself, but again, I'm saying stuff that might trigger something in you that you can write that down and say, oh yeah, that's another one of my strengths too. Okay? So what are your strengths? What are your key strengths that you can use to present in a listing presentation? I really want you to do this because the more you understand this, the more you can present yourself when you're working with a buyer or a seller. Okay? You're not just someone who's gonna say, I'm gonna list your house, put on the MLS and on my website. You're gonna present your value-added proposition. That's where this exercise comes into play. Now, again, keep writing, again, just jot down your strengths, right? But now we're gonna go into weaknesses as well. So again, I'm just gonna keep talking while you guys write. But remember when I said that I'm empathetic? I've got this great empathy for people. That's also my weakness. Okay? And some of you might have the same weakness. I'll give you an example. Has anyone ever talked themselves out of a deal because they felt that if they sell this property, knowing what you know about the train tracks, the highway, the hydro lines, the school, whatever, that you might hear it after? Has anyone ever talked themselves out of a deal? You haven't. Same with me, right? So again, when you start listing your weaknesses, it's not just you listing what they are. And again, the only way this works is if you're honest about it. If you don't list what your weaknesses are, you know what they are, you're not going to list it, you're never going to improve on it. So when I said empathy is one of my strengths, it's also my weakness, because I would look out at the highway that's right there. I'm looking right out, this beautiful big bay window. I'm looking at the highway, which is pretty far away, but I'm still looking at it. Okay? I got the kids running around upstairs, claiming bedrooms. I've got the wife trying to reshuffle the fridge, looking at the stove. Oh, a big turkey will fit in there. Oh, our family will fit in this family room. The dining room is big enough that we can hold both the families. They're already moving in. And I'm talking about the highway that's out there. Has anyone ever done this before? Right? You talk so much about the highway that they all of a sudden don't want to buy the house. If you've done your fiduciary duties by explaining the pros and cons of whatever it is you're thinking about, and they still want to put an offer, you've done your job. You don't have to talk yourself out of a deal. So when you list your weaknesses, you now know what you have to do to improve on those weaknesses to be a better realtor. Okay? So list some of your weaknesses. Is your weakness that you can't negotiate your commission? Put that down. Is your weakness that you have a weak listing presentation? You need to improve it. Do you now need to role play how to actually work with buyers and sellers and closing the deal? Right? Is that a weakness for you? Is one of your weaknesses that you don't know enough about the market? List your weaknesses, because the more you list, the more you know you need to improve. Am I right? Okay. And again, the only way you're going to get better as a realtor is if you're honest with yourself and write down what you truly feel is a weakness that you need to get some help with. Now, opportunities. What elements of the business can you exploit to your advantage that you haven't taken advantage of in the past? So we've gone through your strengths. So again, I've given you a couple of examples. Hopefully it triggered that they're your strengths as well. We've gone through your weaknesses, things you need to improve on. And now we're looking at opportunities. A lot of people put what here? Like, what is something that you think you need to take advantage of more than you are using now? Anyone?
Time.
Pardon me?
Time.
Time, yeah, time management. All right, that's pretty good, because again, a lot of us, again, want to have this work-life balance, and that's what this class is for. How to actually balance your time, work efficiently. A lot of people put social media here because they're not using social media enough. Now, they may have social media, meaning Facebook and Instagram, but they're not actually using it. What they're doing is they're just spending time surfing it, which means you're wasting your productive time. A lot of people here say their opportunities would be that they don't know enough about the lending practices, that they can have a legitimate dinner conversation with people. Now keep in mind, I said legitimate dinner conversation. I don't mean give advice. So when someone says, you know what, based on where the mortgage rates are right now, what's it going to cost me per month to buy this property? You should know that, okay? But when they start saying, well, I get approved because I have this, no. Send them to the professional. But if you want to be a little bit more knowledgeable about what goes on in the industry, lending practices, legal terms, things like that, home inspections, just have enough that you can have what I call dinner conversations with them. Okay? So one time we were looking at a house, and it was a gorgeous home. Backyard was something straight out of Homes and Gardens. So they said, John, listen, we do a lot of gardening. You've seen our garden. We like to plant our fruits and vegetables. How does that gas station being right beside us affect the soil? Will I be able to do my garden? I said, I have no idea. Let's get an environmentalist in here and do a soil sample test, because I'm not going to give them that information. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Because if something goes wrong with that, if something goes south, they're only gonna remember me. So again, have dinner conversation, but at least know enough about that, okay? Now, social media, again, opportunities, time management is what we talked about, threats, elements in your environment that could cause problems for your business. So what's happening in our communities or in our province that's likely going to affect the real estate market? So what happened with the interest rates recently?
Went up.
They went up, right? Actually, didn't they go down just recently? They went down
The
again.
mortgage
The
rates
banks
went down,
posted-
but interest rate.
Pardon me?
The mortgage rates went down, but
Yeah.
interest rate went up like that.
The interest
But the
rates,
last one
yes.
was, there's no
change.
no change.
Right? Okay, so the last major impact was that they went up, right? So everyone knows that, oh, they went up again, but that's all you say. When interest rates go up, what does that do to days on market of a property?
Go up.
It increases the days on market, because now all of a sudden affordability, people who were on the fence, they're no longer on the fence, they just can't get up on the fence anymore, right? Or what it does is, it pushes them out further. So where they were gonna buy in, let's say,
6 months, it's,
or six, yes, year, or they were gonna buy in, let's say, Pickering, now they're moving to Bowmanville, right? So the fact that interest rates went up affects the market in ways that you got to think for an amount of days. The interest rates just went up, which means that we may see a longer days on market, which means a longer months of inventory stretch. Okay. What happened in Oshawa? GM plant. Well, sure, we know that, but what happens to the real estate market in Oshawa in 2 or 3 years? Do we know?
It's gonna go down for sure.
If it happens.
If it happens.
Yeah, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Look at what's happening in the communities. Because where people were moving to Bowmanville to be a first-time buyer, if they can wait 2 to 3 years, depending on whether or not the plant closes, all of a sudden, first-time buyers now have reach in Oshawa. Because again, a whole whack of people will likely sell. Now, I don't have a crystal ball, I'm just putting pieces of the puzzle together. We all do that, right? But don't just think, oh yeah, the plant's gonna shut down. Well, how does it affect your industry? Right? What can you tell your potential buyers?